ballots and appoint Patrick Uwaki to the remaining term of the Shoreline Protection Board.
Okay, motion by Lynn, second by James. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous.
All right, thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Mel. We will recess for lunch and see you back at 1:15.
We are scheduled to start again at 1:15. We're still waiting on Len and Ellie for a quorum. Good afternoon, Michelle. We're just waiting for a couple more for a quorum.
Okay.
If one of our hosts could let Len and Ellie in, they're in the waiting room.
I did.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Next up, we have tribal education. Take it away, Michelle.
All righty. Do we have my first presenter in the room? Let me look.
No, Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
I thought you had Greg Spar up first at 1:15. I just have Michelle in here because it wasn't going to go into executive.
Oh, okay. Is Greg there?
Yes, he's in the chambers.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Sorry, Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. So I'm providing a brief to you on the White House's briefing that they did on the pending Build Back Better legislation. The meeting was designed to relay the importance to Native American communities and to convey the White House's enthusiasm for the legislation. Some of the high points were that they believe this to be the most transformative investment in children and caregiving in generations, that this is the largest effort to combat climate change in American history, that this is the biggest expansion of affordable health care in a decade, that this represents the most significant effort to bring down costs and strengthen the middle class in generations. The White House believes that this has the potential to be a landmark legislation that will provide much needed funding for infrastructure that would impact tribal organizations nationwide. The briefing highlighted traditional infrastructure themes touching on water, sewer, and broadband. It echoed much of the recurring messaging from the White House supporting historically underserved communities. The briefing then shifted abruptly to COVID-19 Omicron variant discussion. They were very matter of fact and did not color their comments with warning or anxiety. They were just passing on information and advising membership or participants of what they were seeing in the community. They conveyed their commitment to addressing the emerging variant as more information became available. There was no concrete information or data presented by the presenter, as it was too soon to offer any specific guidance of any kind. There remained some uncertainty as to whether or not the existing vaccinations were anticipated to be effective, and there was also some uncertainty as to whether there was any efficacy in any current boosters. They highlighted, however, that there was more easy transmissibility experienced in other countries, which they were monitoring, as well as they had anecdotal evidence that the symptoms that people were receiving were lesser than those infected by previous strains. The overarching theme that they were conveying is that they were watching closely and they would update as they uncovered new information. And that summarizes the briefing that was given to the community members.
Question, Madam Chair,
Thank you, Greg. Go ahead, James.
or just a comment. Thank you. My comment is something that you and I had visited a little bit about, Shelley, is making sure that with the indications from the governor's office that he's intending on not accepting some of the provisions of the Build Back Better, hopefully law, I think we need to make sure that there's language in this legislation that allows the tribes to be directly funded and not have a pass through the state of Montana. I was thinking earlier, I remember years ago, we were trying to do that. I want to say it was the air quality program that we were having to deal with pass through funding through the state of Montana, not being able to apply for that funding directly from the federal government. And I think we need to make the administration know that. And Shelley, I think you had mentioned that some of the meetings that you were potentially part of, I think they were possibly talking about that. But I think it's particularly important for those tribes that are in more conservative run states, Republican run states. You know, I think we definitely need to make sure probably Senator Tester's office and folks in probably the Indian Affairs Committee. I'm sorry, I've lost track of who's the chair of the Indian Affairs Committee now, but you know, our lobbyists and folks that have interactions with Congress over this bill, we need to have that provision, those provisions in the law so we can bypass the state if they don't want to accept provisions of Build Back Better, hopefully law coming soon. So thank you.
Thank you, James. And Greg, maybe you can get out information to council on the monies that are specifically targeted towards tribes. And I know that states have additional pots of money as well, but there may be, as James mentions, potential for us to access those dollars as well. So,
I can work on that for you.
okay, perfect. Any other questions for Greg? Yeah, thank you for that, James. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Definitely.
All right, thanks, Greg. Now we can shift gears to tribal education, and I believe Hot Springs is first up. Or is it Charlo?
Hot Springs is first up, but they are not logged in yet. I sent everyone an email a few minutes ago asking them to log in early because Hot Springs was actually scheduled for 1:45. But how would you like to handle that? Would we like Charlotte to go since they're here or?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Steve.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing great, just trying to stay warm.
Okay, I will do share screen and then you will be up, Steve.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me today. Hopefully you can hear me. I just tried to keep things short and sweet again this year. We're all still battling COVID in our own way. It definitely affected us last year with some enrollment. We got quite a few students that left, came back, but overall, we've weathered the storm pretty well. For whatever reason, our school district kids want to be in school and the parents want them in school. Our scores kind of took a hit last spring, which was to be expected after we had missed 3 months the year before, and then just trying to get hybrid learning figured out and the number of students who were taking off-site classes. So this year when we came back full throttle. Our enrollment is still down, but that was just a genuine trend. Our enrollment has been dropping the last 3 to 4 years, even before COVID came. But we actually feel, we just went through our elementary numbers just on our progress monitoring yesterday, and our scores have bounced back pretty well as far as that goes. We're most concerned with our older kids right now, our high school students. Just from a mental health standpoint, with all the things they've had to go through the last year. So there's that battle, and then just keeping them up to date with their academics is hard enough. But overall, I feel pretty good about how we're doing. It could always be better. There's things we need to work on, that's for sure. But I don't know, it'd probably be easier if there's anything you guys see on this sheet or have any questions for us. I'd be glad to answer them.
Chair.
Council have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, James.
Thank you. Just a comment, you know, I read recently where I believe it was the state A schools have collectively, the superintendents have signed a letter of no confidence in State Superintendent Elsie Arnson, and I was kind of wondering if you'd be willing to share your views in terms of that. It's concerning. We do have tribal members that, you know, are across the state and are attending some of those schools. It's interesting to see that those superintendents of those particular schools have shown displeasure in the state superintendent. I was kind of wondering if you're at liberty to indicate your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have no problem sharing my thoughts. So this is my 25th year of education overall. Started out teaching and coaching. I was a principal and was coaching and teaching while I was a principal. Now I'm superintendent. I still teach one class of Algebra 1. And in that time, I've worked with OPI on everything from bus transportation to literacy grants to Title I, Indian Education for All, teacher licensure, Carl Perkins. I mean, you name it. I've worked with OPI on different things. And I don't know if it's a commentary on Elsie Arnston per se, because I've never met her. I don't know her personally. But what I can tell you is OPI is not getting the job done. And whether it's the superintendent of public instruction's fault or a result of COVID or shortage of labor, whatever it is, we need to fix it, and we need to fix it in a big way, because we just got notice this week, for example, that OPI is going to shut down their teacher licensure for 6 months. So if you're a school district and you just get told that, there's a state law that says you're not supposed to pay your teachers unless they're licensed. So does that mean I'm going to have to break the law as a superintendent and not pay my teachers who have, it's not their fault. They're not going to be able to update their licenses next year. When we apply for our Title I grant, I've worked with 2 or 3 of the same people for the past 6 or 7 years in my capacity as superintendent. They're always available, always get right back to you, always give you answers that you feel confident in. And that has not been happening for the last 2 years. So I don't have any direct knowledge as far as the superintendent herself, but if that was happening in Charlotte, I'm pretty sure who would be getting a lot of the criticism, it would be me. So I think that's where that's coming from. I have very little confidence in OPI right now. I really don't. We've been working with them on teacher licensure. We've been working on things with them from transportation with our buses. And if you can get somebody to return a call, or if you can get somebody to send an email, it's a miracle. So you go months before you hear anything back, and then you might not have an answer or a suggestion or advice. So it's a really tough situation. And I think that's where those AA superintendents were coming from. It's not a good situation at all. So hope that answers your question. That's how I feel anyway.
I appreciate your answer and thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, James, for the question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Steve, Michelle. Steve, I just wanted to thank you again for allowing me to come to your school board meeting, and I know they're open. You could have denied me if you wanted to, but I appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak and kind of voice our concerns. And so, you know, on this issue with OPI, if you guys ever need assistance or whatever, you know, I think we would definitely be willing to help out, because a lot of our students, obviously, a lot of our students are in the public school system, and if they're not getting served well by OPI, then, you know, obviously we have a dog in this fight. So, yeah, thank you for being very honest with what's going on. So thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for being at the board meeting. That was, and you did a good job. You know, this COVID thing's got us all wondering what's going to happen next week or tomorrow, for that matter. We've been lucky at Charlotte as far as people have been polite. People have been respectful of each other's views. So from that standpoint, I'm very thankful. I'm not sure if tribal council got results. I was curious, and maybe you guys know or don't know, but we were one of the schools that tried to help tribal health out and hosted a vaccination clinic. And I don't know if that was deemed successful or not, but we're trying our best to put this COVID thing to bed too. But it's definitely a balancing act, keeping everybody you're not going to keep everybody happy. We know that, but it's actually been pretty good in my area so far.
So I have a question for you, Steve. How do you guys select your materials for Indian Education for All funds? Do you have a committee, curriculum committee, or how does that work in Charlotte?
We usually put something out, first of all, to our teachers, and just say, so for example, in the upper grades, we put it out to our history teachers. What have you seen lately at maybe training you've been to? What are you hearing from other teachers in other schools? Where would you like to beef things up? Where do you think we're doing a good job? So we start there, and then we work our way down to the lower grades. They give us ideas. They give us the administration ideas of where we think we want to go with stuff. And that's basically what we do. Unfortunately, we don't have a very strong Indian Education Committee. And COVID's made that even worse. We can't have face-to-face meetings and things like that. So what was it? I call it the old days. The old days, we would have discussions about that at our Indian Education, our parent meetings. But that hasn't happened probably for 3 or 4 years now. I actually can't remember when we actually had a parent Indian Ed meeting face-to-face. That's kind of it in a nutshell, Shelley.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Steve?
I do.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Steve. Thanks
Hey.
for coming today. So this screen that I have up, I'd like to discuss. So, overall, in comparison to what our Native American population is in your district, and then to have their percentage of, for instance, 35% Native American and special ed population is 3 times as high as the population in your district. And then the huge gaps between how the Native students are doing on the Smarter Balanced and your overall student population. What is Charlotte doing to help improve those scores and in support of the special education population as well?
So last year we applied for a targeted support grant, and we started last spring. And when we met as a staff and looked at the students who were struggling the most of it had to, or teachers felt like most of it had to do with attendance or lack thereof, or just home situations, not being able to have the resources to get to school or make it to the bus, or having technology. So I can't remember how many Chromebooks Tribal Ed gave us, so we made sure students had those. Then we started a program, and I can't remember the name of the program, and we had training on that right before school started this fall. And basically it was, I think it was called Empower. Can't remember the name of it. But basically trying to get all students, but particularly those students that are struggling right now, to try to figure out how to take care of them before they get to school. Because when we see them and we have them in class, they're doing really good. So if you pulled apart that 35% in the special ed population, or looked at those Native American kids, the ones who are here every day and have good attendance, they're doing really good things. But we have a group of kids in both sectors where attendance is a major issue. And in our little school where, you know, percentages can look good or look bad because of the numbers of actual students, it makes a big difference. We have, I was just talking to Miranda Berlin the other day about our JOM count and impact aid, and we were talking about particular students, and there's several students that are on our, I guess, numbers, so to speak, as far as percentages, but they haven't tested or done anything because we haven't seen them since last spring. And try to talk to mom and dad or grandma or grandpa and try to figure out what's going on and how to get them to school, or, and in some cases, grandma and grandpa don't know where they're at. Well, we think they're working in the Bitterroot, but we haven't seen him for a while. That's probably the number one thing we see here. If we can get the kids here, we're doing a lot better job targeting those kids. We're fighting an uphill battle with, I would say, about a fifth of them because of attendance. You see them one day, then they're gone for 2 weeks. They're back for 3 days, and then they're gone for a month. And I don't have an answer for it. We've got our school resource officer has done visits. We've sent out letters. I've done a couple of visits. My principal's done a couple of visits. My secretary makes calls. We share a counselor with Dixon. She's tried to do some home visits. Like I said, we started that Empower program this fall, hoping that would help. But again, if the kid's not at school when we're doing those programs in class, we're not having very good success with that kid. So it is helping with the kids who are here, though. We've seen some improvements with the students that are coming. So if anybody has any ideas on how to fix that attendance thing, I know that's an age-old issue. No matter what age of student or what's going on, all of our schools struggle with certain students and getting them to school. So.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what's the status of our truancy portions of our ordinance? How's that? You know, I know that's an issue as well, you know, having someone, you know, kind of keep track of that or go after and, you know, keep those kids in school. What's the status of that?
As far as the tribe side of things, it is a low priority with social services. And so if it reaches the stage where it's education neglect, charges it's turned over to the prosecutor's office for them to move ahead with education neglect and social services. So we have this kind of continuous loop of conversations, and it's almost always the same families. But with everything else that's going on in the world today and on the reservation, and staffing turnover too, you know, that we haven't seen since I took over as department head. We have not seen anyone prosecuted for education neglect. And I appreciate your question, and I know where you're going with it, but I'm actually a really strong advocate for doing everything else that we possibly can first. And so what Steve's talking about, we need somebody on staff that can connect with those families to find out what's in the way, what is getting in the way of their kids' education, and then provide those links to resources, not to do things for them, but to, you know, give them a hand up and in the right direction, and try to help them with whatever it is, and then help them build the relationship with the school district, because that's another thing that I think we can agree on, that, you know, if they don't feel comfortable, then it's easier for them to not send their kids. And so they're not answering the school's calls, they're not answering our calls, they're not answering social services calls. And so it takes a different approach. And punitive SROs, that's not going to work. They're, you know, it's the world that they live in. And so for the really hard cases, these kids that are missing a month of school, we need to figure something else out. And currently, I can tell you that with 2 advocates for 10 schools or 8 districts on the reservation, we don't have the staff and the schools don't have the staff to do this very important work that needs to be done. And so I think that that's part of a bigger conversation, but I totally agree with what Steve is saying is, if we can't get the kids to the school, then there's so many, it's more than just academic supports that are in place. There's the relationship piece that's missing. There's healthy foods that's missing. There's extracurriculars. There's exposure to Indian Ed for All in the classrooms. And so, oops, sorry. We're missing out on, our families and our students are missing out on all aspects of that school environment if we can't get them there. And so, I'd like to defer to Mike Dolson here for a second, if he doesn't mind, because it was a huge part of the conversation for the Tribal Ed Committee yesterday morning.
It was a big part of our conversation, talking about attendance and the needs that we have. And we're trying to support those situations through the Tribal Ed Committee as well. And we have our own attendance problems. And so we're actually looking at maybe trying to add a few bodies to the effort here. And that's what I'm hoping to see happen, that we can help Michelle out with bodies that can go out to the schools and help keep on top of some of these problems and bring about some answers by helping those families realize where they have services that they can utilize to make sure their kids are staying in school. Because education is where it's at. It's so important. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, any other comments? Well, I hope we can work on this issue some more, Steve, and, not come back another year with the same report. I know that, it's always a matter of resources and, just warm bodies to work in the schools or for the tribe. So yeah, let's put our minds together and see what we can make for our children.
One thing I would add is, and it was before COVID, we had, and I think every school had a tribal ed person assigned to them. And that seemed to help with the kids that we had anyway, because that person could then, like Michelle described, they were kind of in charge of those families or contacting them, or we set up a little room for her so she had a place to visit with them about things. She could go to their house or make a call, and it wasn't the SRO or the superintendent or the principal making noise. It was someone that they could maybe trust or relate with, to communicate with. And I mean, then COVID hit, and of course that all went away. But I'm with Michelle as far as, I guess there's times when writing them a ticket or whatever, it gets attention sometimes, but unfortunately, it doesn't fix the actual problem. It works for a little while, and then the kids in school, because mom and dad got a ticket and they make them come for a while, but it doesn't help the overall end result. So if there's some way we could get back to that, where schools had a liaison for tribal students, and then that liaison could be in charge of visiting with those families, helping them see the importance of getting their kids to school, but also helping us to figure out what's going on at home, so we had a better understanding of where they're coming from. Because sometimes it's as simple as they don't have eyeglasses and they're embarrassed that they can't see the board. I mean, we've had a couple instances where it was that simple, and when we knew it, heck, we can figure that kind of stuff out pretty fast. But if we don't know it, there's nothing we can do about it. So anyway, thank you guys for your time today.
So Steve, you don't have a homeschool coordinator?
It's our principal.
Okay.
So our principal is our homeschool coordinator. He's our Title IX coordinator, like we all wear different hats, but there's only two of us.
Madam Chair, one other remark.
Go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to say, Steve, that I am seeing that with some of our students that are around the reservation, our tribal students are not feeling as welcome as they could in school as well. Not welcome, not necessarily by administration or faculty, but by a collective of all the students, the faculty, and everybody. And so that makes it difficult for them sometimes.
I understand. Yep.
Good point, Mike. I know that when I was on the Two Eagle River School Board, we would see a lot of students transferring to Two Eagle because they were getting bullied. They might have been LGBTQ or whatever. They were getting bullied and they would come to Two Eagle. And usually it was, interestingly enough, after the fall student count. So hopefully that doesn't happen anymore, but that was a few years ago that I was on that board, and that's the trend that we would see. So any other questions for Steve? All right, well, we appreciate your report. Oh, I did have one question. I didn't see it in the report to see what the number of Native staff or teachers specifically that you have.
It's up there about the top of the line, Shelley. We're about 14% Native American. And that's if they report it to me. That's one of those figures where you're not supposed to ask if, there's all those questions you're not supposed to ask. So I always put out if there's anybody feeling like they want to report one way or the other on certain things. Some of them do and some of them don't.
So is that faculty, classified staff? What is that?
That would be overall, so it'd be faculty, teachers, and aides.
Okay. Do you have a good working relationship with SKC Education Department to get student teachers and hire our graduates?
Yes, we've actually had, we get asked every year if we'll take student teachers, and as long as we have, what would I say, tenured teachers that are able to take them, we always volunteer to take student teachers, so.
Okay, great. Michelle?
Yes. Thank you, Steve. Excuse me. Next up, we have Gerald Chenard out of Hot Springs.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, guys.
Gerald, you're up and you can share your screen.
I'm here, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
I was messing with my computer to pull everything up to get my face up there, and I somehow got out of this window. Okay, it looks like it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I will share my screen now. Everybody see that? I think.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gerald Chenard. I'm superintendent at Hot Springs Schools. This would be my second year here. I spent the first 25 years of my career in Idaho. in both eastern and western Idaho. I spent the next 6 years back in Montana. I'm a Montana native from Butte. I spent my first 6 years as a principal for 2 years and superintendent for 4 years in Lame Deer, Montana, and moved over back into the western part of the state 2 years ago. And I've been here at Hot Springs since. And we'll start today. Tell you a little bit about our staff makeup. With about 35 folks on staff, we've got one American Indian, Native American teacher, Mrs. Candy Franklin. Both administrators, myself and my K-12 principal, neither one of us are Native. Though I had the privilege of being named back in Lame Deer by the Northern Cheyenne tribe, Vo'aka Etza, which means bald eagle flying. I was honored with that name back in 2017. We have no classified staff that are American Indian at this time. And at this time, we have 173 students within the school, K-12, and 17 of those students are American Indian. And of those 17, every one of them are tribal members. As far as professional development opportunities for our teachers in support of our students, we participate in our tribal ed days. We've participated in trauma-informed. Several of our teachers have been trauma-informed trained. Of course, they use the OPI Learning Hub to support all our students and our Native American students as one of those groups of students that they support. I know that, and I was really happy to see Michelle sent out email the other day in regard to restorative practices training that's upcoming through SKC, and that's going to be awesome. And I plan on sending some folks to that. And then we've done a lot through professional learning communities and data and identifying and targeting our kids that are needing intervention and helping them progress through the intervention process. And the professional learning community training has helped, once again, any of our struggling students, including any special needs students, as well as those Native American students that are facing those challenges. Now, as far as our testing data is concerned, we'll start with ACT. I don't have as many assessments this year as I had last year because we're going through some transitions, as well as going through some challenges with COVID in getting through those transitions. But I'll start with ACT. This year and next year, or excuse me, this last year, this year, and next year, if the population stays as it is, we'll have no students taking, none of our American Indian students taking the ACT because of the fact that we don't have anyone that'll be graduating. So our overall district average, whether it be due to COVID or any of a number of other things, as well as COVID, we actually went down as district average from 20 to last year to average of 18 on the ACT this year. Now, this year also, we are going through a transition in our progress monitoring assessment piece, which in the past has been Ames Web. And Now we're transitioning to Fast Bridge, and we've only been transitioning for the past 3 months. So really wasn't statistically significant to be putting that on here. In addition, we don't have a comparison between the year before last and last year. So we're unable to show growth on where we were because of the fact that it was a COVID year and the state had a waiver on our next one, on our Smarter Balance testing. And so where we're at as far as our Smarter Balance math for 2021, overall, we were at 22% proficiency. However, our Native American students, which that would be 7 of the 17 that we have identified, none of them met proficiency in grades. I believe it's grades 5 through 10 are those 7 identified students that are in those testing age groups. At the same time, in reading, we were at 29% proficiency as an entire school. However, once again, those 7 students did not meet proficiency on that Smarter Balance assessment. That being said, that is one snapshot in time. However, it is concerning, and therefore those 7 students are identified, and we are targeting their intervention through that, as I mentioned, the professional learning community process, which is a teaming process at each grade level, and within each each subject area within math and reading, focusing upon what holes there are within their learning sphere and meeting the challenges by providing interventions for those students to fill those holes so that we see growth. What we'll be able to do next year, if we run into discrepancies like we're running into now, what we'll be able to do with the added Fast Bridge assessment in there, we'll be able to show what growth has occurred for each one of our students. So for each one of these students that has not met proficiency this year, we'll be able to see exactly where they are next year. In addition, we'll have 2 straight years of consistent intervention and therefore consistent benchmarking on the Smarter Balance assessment to be able to see where the growth is there as well. The goal between this year and next year on our Smarter Balance assessment, the goal for each one of our students will be no less than 3.5% growth in percentage of proficiency on this particular assessment. Any questions on this one before I go further? Okay, I'll go ahead and move forward. Now, when we look at our graduation rate, dropout rate, once again, we will not have a senior or a graduate this year or next year. It will be another 2 years until we do, but overall as a district, we're at 94% graduation rate and 6% on our dropout rate at this time. Now, our grade point average or average daily attendance and our average daily attendance. First of all, our grade point average. As you can see, our American Indian students are at the same average as the overall student population. So they're right in line with our entire school population. Our daily attendance rate for 2021, our district average was 92% daily attendance rate, and our American Indian student average was 92.3% average daily attendance. So our students were once again right in line with the general population. Our participation in activities this year has gone down, I believe, about 13% as far as our American Indian population is concerned. And I think more so because of the fact that our American Indian population has gotten younger within our system than it was last year. And therefore, we've got less of our kids participating in those middle school and high school activities, mainly being sports. Discipline data this year, for those of you that might have remembered last year, we were at 18 total incidents so far last year at this time. This year, we've gone up considerably from 18 total incidents to 31. That being said, much like last year, our American Indian students have been involved in none of those. So that's positive to see that trend is continuing. Our Indian Education for All implementation, when I came into the district last year, we were fairly limited, and by some standards, we are limited, but by the same token, we are creating a more robust Indian Education for All program. In all classrooms, K through 12, we have various classroom lessons dealing with Native cultures throughout the year. In addition to that, we have a Native American club made up of students and teachers that spearhead many efforts throughout the course of the school year. Throughout Native American Heritage Month and Native American Heritage Day, we have several activities sponsored by our Native American Club and participated in by the entire student and employee body here at the school. And I've actually provided a artifact in the packet on an activity that we did this year during Native American Heritage Month, in which everyone was participating, and we call it majors and minis. And we've got, for lack of a better way to put it, mentors in the upper grades that bring groups through different activities, celebrating the culture here within the school, as well as the macro culture here on the reservation, and throughout the nation in cultural activities throughout the course of the day. And it's been very successful and very well received by the community. Our Native American Studies class that we began last year in the junior high in the 2021 school year, we expanded that into the high school this year and have fortified that program and are continuing to do so. And I know that our teachers, the two teachers involved, one of them being our Native American teacher and another non-native teacher that's taken the high school. I know that they've been in touch with SKC and Tribal Ed, and will continue to do so to fortify that Native American program into a very, very robust program. And as it's mentioned there on this slide, that the students truly do travel through that seasonal round of activities, learn about the cultures, customs, civilizations of Native Americans in general, and the tribes of Montana in particular. Now, some of the things that we need, if you remember last year, I talked about the JOM-IEC. We really need to fortify that team. Obviously, it's been hampered by COVID-19 challenges during the school year, last year, and at the beginning of this year. We were hit with the Delta variant this year, and it was very difficult to, particularly after the Sanders County Fair, which really affected the way in which we did things at the beginning of the year. We were unable to get that where we wanted at this time, but we hope to, knock on wood, if we can get through the next wave of the next variant, the Omicron variant, we can get past that and really start making some headway toward getting our JOM-IEC up and running and creating a good, robust team to be able to advise the school with the direction that we need to be going and continuing to implement our local reservation culture and tribes into the everyday teaching going on in the school. Another thing that we need to continue is continue communication between the tribe and the school. I really want to give a shout out to Anita Matt, Vice Chairwoman, for attending one of our COVID-19 meetings this year. We do those twice a month. They're an open meeting, and we discuss what our challenges are. Our school nurse communicates with us, and based upon things that are going on within the tribe, as well as the county here in Sanders County, to make sure that we're up on everything and mitigating the pandemic successfully or effectively. I can't say it's always successful, but as effectively as we possibly can. But thanks to Anita to being there, and it was really great information to hear what's going on throughout the reservation and how different districts are handling the mitigation process as far as COVID is concerned. Another thing that I found that coming from Lame Deer to Hot Springs is I believe that we need a more robust cultural sensitivity training for our teachers and a more robust trauma-informed professional development, really a program, so that we're able to better support our kids that are coming to us with a great deal of trauma in their lives, and ensuring that we're not creating more trauma for them on the basis of a lack of sensitivity to where they're coming from. And so I will be seeking out and hopefully touching base soon with Michelle and the tribal ed department on what are the possibilities of getting further cultural sensitivity training for my teachers in here, and continuing that trauma-informed professional development, refreshers, whatever it may be, to more effectively meet the needs of our kids. Another thing I want to make sure that we're continuing to do, and I really like what I've seen in the last really the last 6 months, even with the COVID challenges, is a continued cultural presence within the school and an increase in such to ensure that our kids know the culture that they're living in, and getting school elders and speakers in to speak of the stories and cultural activities. It creates a very, very healthy environment for all of our kids that come from a Native background, as well as those that do not, that come from non-Native backgrounds. And then finally, I know with COVID, it's been, whether we've not taken advantage of it or whether it's not been available, I'm glad to see that it's really being offered and encouraged by tribal ed tutoring program for American Indian and tribal students. I want to see more of that, and I want to see us reaching out more, including my principal, to ensure that we're working out the logistics and ensuring that each and every one of our students that need intervention are receiving it, not only from us, but from any other resources that we can. And that includes any resources that are being offered by the tribe. So on that, I've included our ARP ESSER plan, and that this year that replaces our continuous school improvement plan. And the details of it details our goals in reaching out to our Native students, as well as any other of our students that are dealing with any type of challenges that need a great deal of intervention. It goes into our professional learning community process and our data analysis to ensure that we are targeting and identifying the needs of each and every one of our students, and ensuring that our Native students are moving forward toward the goals that we're setting for them, to see them moving forward and not backward, and not staying complacent as we move forward. In addition to that, again, I've got artifact in there, and at this time I would be happy to do my best to discuss and answer any questions for you.
Question, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead, James.
Thank you. Just a question. I've been asking the different superintendents the same question, but on earlier in this month, we had the school superintendents from the AA schools send a press release or a letter expressing disappointment and no confidence in the leadership of the superintendent of public instruction, Elsie Arntzen. And, you know, I've given the different superintendents just an opportunity to express how they feel concerning her leadership, or at least express how, you know, your relationship has been Hot Springs School District with the OPI, you know. So if you feel free to do that, and I appreciate that you do have a background in teaching in native schools and other reservations in the state. I appreciate that background. But I was curious as to how, what your relationship has been, or how are things going for Hot Springs and OPI, I guess is my main point.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question. As far as my relationship with OPI, I've had a relationship with OPI going on 8 years now. As far as the support that we receive from OPI, it's been a challenge this year. It's been a challenge really since the beginning of COVID. I can go back to my last district. It becomes a further challenge when things become politicized to a point that the only way in which superintendents can get the attention of the superintendent of public instruction is to put something out such as that. Now, one of the things that I've run into frustration about, anything from the accreditation process and getting appropriate and effective support from OPI going into last year, which it's something that we are held accountable to them with, to effectively meet the level of accountability that they're asking for. We do need their support. One runs into frustration when they don't have that. Another thing, we've got a teacher shortage throughout the state, yet we've got a very ineffective system of certifying our teachers in order to ensure that, once again, we're meeting accountability. Those are the type of things day to day that are frustrations of mine. It doesn't help when we're in an environment with COVID that has become political, in which our school leader seems to be lacking in areas of support of those folks that need it most, mainly being our school boards and our school leadership, because it trickles down to teachers and it trickles down to the support of our kids. So to say I'm frustrated, I guess, would be very accurate at this point in time. That being said, I don't know that I would want my name, or I would want to write a letter to our state superintendent in order to work out the challenges and the frustrations. I would much rather sit around a table and work on solutions.
Appreciate the answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Gerald. Any other questions from council? Michelle, did you have anything?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Gerald.
Hey, Michelle.
So first of all, how did you guys come to the decision to change your benchmarking assessments? And then outside of that, what do you do as teams to provide the support for the students that need the interventions? Let's say Maya is in your school district, and it's determined that she's below grade level in reading and math. What next?
Okay, first of all, part of the decision was we use a co-op for our special ed program. And in order to become consistent with the co-op and to be speaking the same language, we needed to move to the same outfit that they're using. And no, had I gotten here a year earlier, we probably wouldn't have gone to Ames Web. Not that I don't think Ames Web is a good instrument. It is. But the fact is that when our special ed department is using FastBridge, there's really no reason for us to be dealing apples to oranges. We need to be consistent. So that's number one. And that really relates to your granddaughter or your daughter. That really relates to her being able to come into a system in which when she's come in, she's below grade level. Like I've got 7 kids here that I've just been made aware of that are below grade level based upon the data that I've received here in the last month and a half. I want to make sure that when I do start going and comparing this data, there's going to be some validity in that data. And I've got one set of data over here that maybe is telling me something different than this set of data over here. And I've got to pull those together. It's much more effective for me to be doing so, again, using the same piece of data, or excuse me, the same instrument this year as I was using last year to compare that data. That being said, so we get in there and we find that your granddaughter is she's lacking in her comprehension skills. Well, what within those comprehension skills? Is it a vocabulary problem? We drill down deeper and we drill down deeper, and we set that goal. But then, by the same token, within those teams, we've got somebody that the goal is set, but the strategies that are being worked on by that individual teacher, if they're not working, we've got a number of things we can do within that team. Number one, take strategies from another teacher, or maybe move that child into that other teacher's room if this particular teacher is not being effective. And at the same time, get that teacher some level of professional development in the short term and ensure that that teacher knows that they are accountable in the long term to be able to meet the needs of that student through those type of actions, and really pinpointing and putting a laser sharp focus on each child's holes, and then building the strategies up to meet and eliminate those holes. That's how we move forward. I think when I look at my 7 kids right here, my first reaction is to my principal is I'm appalled. What's being done for my kids? Well, the data is not matching up. What do you mean the data is not matching up? Well, things are inconsistent because of Ames Web and this. Okay, well, this is our starting point then. By this time next year, I expect these kids to be making progress. And if they're not making progress, I need to know why. That's the accountability system that I've got to put on to my principal, and he's got to ensure that are going on within the teams that we've set up. By the same token, I've got to give those teachers the support that they need, whether it be professional development, or whether it be strategies, or whether it be peer strategies and peer accountability within the team to be able to help them improve their instruction or their ability as educators to then begin to make those steps forward to eliminate that gap of where our children are now and where they need to be. And it's up to the teacher to decide what those strategies are. It's up to the principal to provide them with the support in order to implement those strategies and implement them effectively with good, sound, research-based practices.
Okay, thank you. So how does the parent role or the guardian role come into play in that scenario of supporting the student to get to where they need to be?
They're part of the team. It needs to be at a minimum, it needs to be a three-way team between the teacher, the student, and the parent. But in a scenario such as this, I've got, again, I go back to my 7 kids. I've got 3 of those 7 kids at a minimum that the administrator is going to need to be involved within that process as well. And I'm not saying that, every time the kid runs into a problem, the administrator is involved. I'm saying at a minimum, once every month to every 2 weeks, that administrator is involved in a meeting or a Zoom or some touch base to ensure that, okay, where are we, what are you running into at home? Here's what we're running into here. Here's what we're working on. Is this being reinforced at home? And what do you need and able to reinforce that at home? Is he or she working on the different intervention activities on their Chromebook? And is that interaction coming back with the teacher in order to ensure that it's being reinforced both ways? We're all on the same page, because if you take that out in a couple of these situations, you take that facilitator, that administrator out of that, that flow of communication can get lost in a busy teacher's life and a busy parent's life. So bringing that together, the administrator, usually the principal, has to step in. And I, as superintendent, have to ensure that he or she is stepping in and is doing so effectively. And sometimes that takes my intervention within the situation as well, whether as an observer or a co-facilitator, to ensure that that's happening.
Okay, thank you. So I know that Hot Springs added Native American Studies to the high school. It was already at the middle school with Candy. How is that going, and what's the attendance like, or not attendance, but enrollment like for the Native American Studies?
It's good. It's I think we've got about I want to say 7 or 8 kids in there, which that is in the high school, in our small high school. That's a good amount. It's a well-attended elective. When I look at that versus some other very good electives, such as it's double what band is. It's double what our weight training class is. That's not required. That's not a required PE course. It's very well attended, and we've got a great teacher in there, in Mrs. Miller, and we got the best teacher we could possibly put in there, and she's making it a very robust course. And I'd love to have any of you come in and observe in that, or spend the day here at school. We'll feed you the whole 9 yards, but come into that class and come into Candy's class, because there, I look, as I'm speaking, I'm jumping back to Lame Deer, and we had some great folks there as well. But the couple of folks that I'm thinking of back in Lame Deer, they were Cheyenne natives. They were locals. Mrs. Miller is not, and she's doing just a bang up job. I would say she's right on par with our Native American Studies teachers back in Lame Deer, for sure.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other questions from council? All right, well, thank you, Gerald.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. And I welcome you anytime you'd like to come out. You don't have to call, you don't have to do anything. Just show up and we'll welcome you with open arms. Love to have you here.
Thanks, Gerald.
Yep. Everybody, happy holidays. Have a great day and a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
See ya.
Okay, who's up next? Polson?
Yes, Polson and Mike Cutler. So let me find my screen here. Okay, you are up, Mike.
Yeah, I apologize. We were ready to go at 2 because I don't know, the agenda seemed to have changed, but we're ready to go now. First and foremost, Michelle, thank you for having us. Council, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mike Cutler, and I was the superintendent in Phillipsburg for 17 years before I retired from there for a year or two, went into some consulting business, and then was fortunate enough to get the job here in Polson. So very excited to be here. Again, I just started in July. So I have Mr. Leonardo here. Tom's been in this district for a long time. And he was the superintendent last year. So if there's some questions that come up as the presentation goes, I want to make sure that one of us can get those answered for you and go from there. So I'm new to this process, Michelle, so please interrupt me or guide me in a different track. I'm assuming everybody has the presentation that I provided to you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I guess I'm assuming that it's showing on everybody else's screen.
Yes, and it should be showing on your screen as well. Do you guys have your Zoom up? I shared it, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for doing that. So really, on the first page, you look at, I'm gonna excuse myself for a second. I gotta get my glasses. Anyway, I'll get to it. If you look at the first page, you look at our number one, certified staff, and the enrollment of our students, native students and non-native students, and so on and so forth. So, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as it pertains to our extracurricular activities and such. So, but right in front of you there are the spring of 2021 Smarter Balance scores, and I'll be the first one to tell you they're not great in any stretch of imaginations. And I can sit here and make excuses. And the first excuse that I would make is COVID was a nightmare for all of us starting last spring. And so as we look at scores, we're always going to be looking at things that we can do better. And so I will report that we're starting an after-school program starting in January. And we're getting through the details of that right now currently. And we're trying to provide transportation for those kids and so on and so forth. So the Smarter Balance scores are extremely important to us. And so, and if you screen down, if you go down a little bit, you look at our ACT scores in the high school, GPAs and things like that. So I guess I would entertain any questions on this page if there are any.
So I guess I do have a question. So all the schools have experienced, I guess, these situations with the pandemic, and, you know, I know you guys offered, I guess, a hybrid at one time. What are you guys doing to get back on track now and to raise these, to get people back, so we don't lose a year and a half, basically?
Well, that was the focus of our admin leader team meetings for the last month, really, on trying to bridge this gap. And our immediate focus right now is these after-school programs and trying to provide transportation for those kids. So, you know, attendance is a big deal for sure, but that's the immediate response.
And we're just looking at ways for more time and more educational opportunities for our students. We offered summer programs last summer and had actually quite a few high school students that took advantage of that, 50 students in fact. And of course, it's a different situation with high school because it's all about credit recovery and getting those students to graduate on time. It's more of a challenge in the middle school and elementary, you know, getting the kids to commit to want to spend extra time in school. We'll offer that again this summer, along with an early start for our younger students. So we just need more time with our students. It's real simple. We lost 12 weeks when the whole state was shut down in early 2020, and then last year was a difficult year for everyone as well. The other thing that we could point out is, you know, all last year, we stressed to our students and families that if you do not feel well, you need to stay home. And, you know, we did have very low attendance rates last year. And there's a correlation between not coming to school and low test scores. So.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering about the fourth grade. Can you give us any light on why they are so low?
I cannot. I have not dived into that yet. In fact, we pretty much just got these results not that long ago. In fact, we talked about them just last week in our admin team meeting. So I'm sorry, sir, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I surely can provide that to Michelle upon request for sure. Fifth grade is not good either. None of them are very good, you know, so we've got some issues. You know, you look at the sixth grade, the entire sixth grade's not good. So, and those are math scores. I don't know, I guess the reading scores are probably going to show the same thing, I would imagine. Yeah. They do. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So since you just got the scores, leading up to this, what has been your district's approach to supporting the students that are below grade level or lower achieving students? What interventions do you already have in place prior to discussing these scores?
Well, we have reading and math interventions in all grade levels, and title support, extra personnel in grades K through 4 specifically.
So what do those interventions look like specifically? Let's say for a fourth grade student who's below level on reading and math, what would those interventions look like for that?
Basically, they're in math and reading with their peers, and then they have an extended time, so like a double dose at another time during the day where they work with our math intervention teacher and our reading intervention teachers.
So are the interventions approached in a different way to meet the students where they are? Is the instruction differentiated?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michelle, and they are targeted based on the student's needs.
And that's, Michelle, that's the plan of this after-school program that we're trying to get established, is to, you know, if you will, for lack of a better term, you know, IEPs for each one of these kids, an individual educational plan. That's kind of the purpose of it. You know, we're trying to get more teachers involved and so on and so forth. And I'm hoping that we're able to get this taken care of. ESSER money's allowed us the finances and the resources to do this. So we need to jump on it, and that's our goal for sure.
So what's the participation in your after-school program like right now?
We haven't started it yet.
We're recruiting.
Oh.
We're recruiting staff right now. So we have one teacher at Cherry Valley that said yes, 1.5 at Linderman.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, maybe 2 at Linderman. We have 2 at the middle school, and we have 1 at the high school right now. So we've been in the recruiting stage, like Mr. Cutler said, the last month or so.
We're trying to launch this in the second semester is our target date. And I don't want transportation to be an issue. We have, I don't know, 20 some whatever bus routes. So we're looking at running a bus down both east sides of the east and west side of the lake, creating some drop zones for students and things like that. So anyway, it's in its initial phases, but we plan on sustaining this as well. I'd like to keep it going at all times, all year, and maybe extend it a little bit longer in the summer. So this has been a huge topic of our conversations at this very table when we have our leadership meeting or team meetings, excuse me.
Okay, I'll forward your report a little further. You can discuss those points.
Okay. Okay, so right there, the GPAs of all the students in the high school and the middle school, native and non-native, are their graduation rates, to me, are not good for either non-native or native students. So, and I'm not, this is 2019, 2020. Is that correct? It's not last, yeah, so that's last year, I'm sorry. Anyway, we had an attendance issue last year, and I don't know that that was unique to Polson schools by any means. So, you know, like I said, I'm not here to make excuses, but there's those graduation rates have got to increase. One thing that we are planning on doing is expanding our Native American high school. In fact, we're running a bond issue in May, and there's going to be a part of the new addition that's going to be strictly for Native American studies and things like that. So anyway, that's we've got to get those graduation rates up for sure. We're also trying to expand our alternative classrooms, which right now are being housed in the Boys and Girls Home or Boys and Girls Club, and we're hoping to get that on campus if we can possibly get this bond election passed. So the next is our school year attendance. And again, they're not great. We sure love to see, you know, the high 90s. But again, COVID was an issue last year, and Tom's exactly right. We had a pretty strong message to keep your kids at home if they were sick at all. And I think that has a little bit to do with where our attendance records or attendance percentages are.
I'll stop here for a second. Does anyone on council have any questions about attendance?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, I will keep going.
Next, you kind of see the discipline report, and these are based on, I will say right off the top, we didn't put last year's numbers together because last year was such a disaster with attendance, the hybrid schedule and so on. I didn't think that it shows really what's going on. So these are up year to date discipline situations in all the schools. So if you look at our out of school suspensions in Cherry Valley, which you're hoping there's not many when you're talking pre-K to first grade. We've had one non-native student, and then down in Winterman, we get a little bit older kids, two, 3, and 4, fourth grade, we haven't had any. And PMS, we've had a number of out of school suspensions, and the majority of those are non-native students. PMS, you know, middle school is always quite interesting when it comes to discipline. And then at the high school, we're, 10 native students and 27 non-native. So I would take any questions there if need be. Okay. So Indian Ed for All, I'm not going to, do all the members have the hard copy of this, Michelle? Will they have a hard copy of it?
Yes, we do. It's in our packet.
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't want to sit here and read it to you. Oh, that's Charlotte. There we go. There we go. First of all, I want to tell you how exciting it is and how important it is for us to have Rodney in our school. He does a great job, and some of the things, like I said, I'm not going to read to you, but most of our lessons are based on the seasonal Salish Kootenai tribal descriptions for the month. So,
and if I may point out,
absolutely.
In previous years, Rodney was a half-time employee. This year, we made a commitment using some federal funding to keep Rodney in our school all day long. It's been great for him. So he's a full-time 8-hour employee. He spends the morning at Linderman with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade students. And it's super exciting because this is his 3rd year in our district. So he knows all those 2nd and 3rd graders, and they know him. And so we have him at Linderman half day and Cherry Valley the other half. So we are really excited about that.
So there in front of you right there is some of the professional development things, opportunities we give to the teachers. They're always available. Go ahead, Michelle, unless there's questions. Oh, now we're into the into middle school. And those are specific lessons. Go up just a little bit more. There you go. This is even more, please, Michelle. I'm sorry. Where are we at?
Linderman at the bottom.
Okay, right there, good. So basically our PMS is pretty much under the cultural recognition days. And so those are kind of all the days that are recognized, and lessons are taught off those days. And then you can kind of go down there, Michelle, and see individual lessons where they fit into, the math and language arts and so on and so forth. Right there you go. Those are the individual lessons that are being taught throughout the middle school. And I don't know if right now is the right time to say this, but we couldn't be happier and more excited about the Project Aware program. Michelle, and I think you need to, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit right now to make sure that's at least 5 years, I guess, instead of just the 3. So we're hoping that's the case anyway. And now I think we're at the high school stuff. No, we're not.
Just continuation, of middle school. There we go. There's high school, one book, one school.
Yep. So there's kind of what we're doing in the high school as well. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. And then the extracurricular participation. This is where I said at the beginning of this presentation that these numbers, if you look at the native students that are participating in these athletic events and or academic stuff, it's really, the ratio is really pretty similar to the non-native and native ratio for our entire school district. So we for sure like to see those go up, but those percentages on the far right really kind of match the percentages if you were just to say native students and non-native students in our population. So
did you see a decrease in the eligibility of native students compared to non-natives because of the pandemic?
We didn't. Our high school eligibility is based on the semester grades, and we really didn't see any of that last year, and we haven't seen it this year, fortunately.
we don't anticipate seeing it either.
Good question, though. One of the things we know that keeps kids connected and engaged in their schoolwork is the carrot of being able to participate in cheerleading or basketball, wrestling, football, cross country, speech and debate, etc. So those students really want to participate in those extracurricular activities, so they do what they need to do in the classroom in general. We were very pleased. Last week we had our first high school band concert. Some of the students that were performing on the stage hadn't had that opportunity for 2 years to do that. So it was great to see a nice community turnout and a lot of students up on the stage performing.
No comment. Madam Chair.
Go ahead, James.
Thank you. You know, just a interesting thing as to how times have changed. You know, just even back in the 80s and 70s, it was to have Polson schools or any of the schools simply fly the tribal flag on the school property was a gargantuan political battle. You know, just to fly and admit that this is a reservation, and there are still some in our community on this reservation that still ignore that fact. And you know, so for me personally, it's nice to drive by the school districts there in Polson or any on the res and see the acknowledgement that this is a tribal nation, and it was a battle at one time just to even have the tribal flag flown at the different school districts on the reservation. And I say that because you have a portion of your student population that are Salish, Pend Oreille, Kootenai citizens, but they're also citizens of the state of Montana, and we collectively are citizens of the United States. A portion of those students we know that you have that are native are from here, and they're from other reservations. And if you look at the family backgrounds of those students, you know, a lot of them primarily have moved here, you know, for SKC, or maybe work with the tribes, or maybe some of the economic opportunities that they have here that they don't have on their home, at their home reservation. So my question is, it's just kind of thinking about the diversity of your, particularly your Native American population. You know, I'm kind of wondering what that breakdown is a little bit, you know, how many maybe are from other tribes from the home reservation here, Salish, Pondere, or Kootenai. Maybe you don't know that, or maybe do, but it was just a curiosity of mine as to what that breakdown looks like a little bit in the Polson school system, you know, from other tribes.
We don't track that
Okay.
to my knowledge, but I would kind of, I guess that's an interesting question that I have as well. I'll look into seeing if we can't find that information. I'm not sure if we'll be able to. but-
You should have that information in relation to your Title VI grant.
If the parents indicate it, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Which tribe, yep. But
Tom, do you have a guess of what that might be?
yeah, I mean, it's probably in the 10% below. I'd say obviously Salish, Kootenai are two, and then probably Blackfeet would be the next predominant tribe, and then, you know, the local tribes in maybe some Crow. And Councilman is correct. We do have families that move in temporarily for a year or two while their parents or guardians attend classes at SKC. But yeah, we could get that demographic breakdown for you and send that as an email for sure.
Yeah, just curious. The other thing that often comes up, follow up, in all the schools, I went through the Arley school system and graduated there. Excuse me. But, you know, we have such a diverse community on the reservation in terms of, you know, our Native population and non-Native population and variety of backgrounds. And, you know, we do have the elements on this reservation that are pretty anti-tribal, anti-Indian, period. We'll just put it bluntly. It still exists. It's unfortunate, but you know, what is you all's philosophy in terms of when you see that in students or staff or community members, how is that addressed? How do you all deal with that? You know, if someone comes to your office and say X, Y, and Z, those Indians, this and that, how do you all handle that? You know, I've had, you know, in my time as council member and as my time as growing up on the reservation, you know, I've heard the things, you know, Harley School, they go to the trip over to the side of the Sanders County, particularly, the bus would have racial things written all over the side of the bus. And that was Native students and non-Native students on the bus from Arley, and they all got treated the same because they came from a reservation school. They got, that was applied to all those students. You know, an unfortunate, Polson itself has had a history. You know, at one time, the city council there wanted to secede, proposed somehow to secede from the reservation, and you know, thankfully those days have gone by, but that's our history, or at least that's the Polson community history. You know, I'm kind of putting you all on the spot, but that stuff happens yet even today, and we face that as a tribe, and we hear those things, and our young people hear those things from other students, from not teachers, hopefully, Well, I heard it from teachers in my day, but
Better not hear from teachers.
yeah, and I think, how do you all deal with that? And I'm just curious, so.
There has to be, a no tolerance for sure. We just don't tolerate any of those discussions. And if there's a teacher that's this way, they won't be here for very long. I haven't ever been told of any situation like that. We have to get along. For the best opportunity for all our kids. And if we have that attitude, and I'm preaching to the choir here, I know that, but if we have that attitude, whether it's one way or another, it gets in the way of production. And unfortunately, our entire country is kind of in this whole kind of mess this way. And so it's our obligation to try and get the kids out of that. And, and hopefully they can be models for everybody else as they go through there. But unfortunately, you're right. There's adults both ways that just can't get along and won't get along. But our stance at the school is always no tolerance, and it just will remain that way. It has to be that way.
Follow-up question, if I may, kind of a question I've been asking all the superintendents of the schools today. We see in the news that the AA schools sent out a note or letter to the state to show disapproval in the leadership of the OPI. And some superintendents have answered in a way that specifically towards Arnson's leadership or lack thereof, and some have just expressed how it's been a challenge with working with OPI. I was wondering if either you gentlemen would elaborate as to, either how, what your feelings are with that AA school superintendent's letter, or your experience with OPI lately, and maybe the pluses and minuses or pros and cons or challenges of that. Thank you.
Well, first of all, our challenges with OPI are legitimate. Say what you want. Number one, I think that the superintendent of public instruction should be a nonpartisan person, and she's not. And I don't know that there's ever any way around that because it's an elected position. But we have issues with OPI. We have issues with all kinds of things because there's nobody there. In fact, they just put licensure on hold. So we could very well be in a bind next year for having teachers that are trying to get relicensed that can't. So I guess my stance is that from a personal, I'm not representing Polson schools in any way when I say this. I have issues with OPI in the way it's being run and the way that she is supporting schools. In my mind, she went one total extreme, and she's forced us to basically do what we just talked about with not getting along. And she's dug her feet in and so on and so forth. So go ahead.
Well, this is my 31st year in education in Montana, and it's extremely disappointing to see our leader attend rallies, political rallies, anti-mask rallies, and take a stance that way. It doesn't help any of us, and it hasn't helped any school, in my opinion. So we're counting down the days when we can put someone new in that position.
Recruiting's already going on.
Someone like Michelle Mitchell.
Michelle Mitchell would be a perfect person for that.
Bring Denise back.
Good, Michelle, you've agreed to that, so. Perfect.
We just got the nod.
You did nod, Michelle, so we'll get that campaign going right now.
No, thank you.
Hey, we're trying to do Project Aware, leave her alone.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We need Project Aware here for sure.
Yeah.
Selfishly, we need her here, not there.
Yeah.
I hope we answered your question about, Elsie, but.
I want to add that this isn't new behavior for her. It's just that there's more of a spotlight on it now. She was attending rallies for privatization of education as the top leader for public education for the state. And I think that just in the last year that it's been more publicized on what she's doing and what she's saying, and how many people actually left OPI since she has come on, which in turn causes this disruption in services to the schools that really rely on OPI. And so, yeah, I don't think she's doing anything different than she ever has. I think she's just finally getting caught for it, or being called out for it anyway.
I think she's magnifying it myself, Michelle, because she's trying to get to a higher political position. I think she's after John Tester's seat in the state senate. And I think that's what's going on here. That you're right. She hasn't been popular with most from the get-go. And so, but I think at the last election, she was kind of the only show in town, because something with the other candidates, something came up negatively, I guess, legally with that person's spouse. And so it was almost kind of a, who do we have left? And unfortunately she got reelected, and here we are. But, and again, I'm speaking for me, I'm not speaking for Folsom Schools, but I have zero confidence in the woman.
Well, we just work around obstacles, and hopefully that's what Project Aware will be.
Well, she can't get in the way of that, can she?
No, we'll fly under the radar.
Okay, any more questions from council before we wrap up here? I think we have mission on at 3:15.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank
Thank you,
all.
guys.
thank you, gentlemen.
See you
Have a great
soon.
holiday. Thank you.
Okay, I believe Jason and Sean, or is it Tyler that's with him today?
You guys hear us all right?
Oh, okay. It's Jason and Sean. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Mr. Arlett had to run and get, he's gonna have a meeting. He'll be back here in a little bit. So we'll kick it off, get rolling, and then he'll join us here after a bit.
Okay. I will do share screen, and just tell me where I need to go. I'm sure we're not going to review the entire 100-some page document.
Well, most of you know, I mean, we haven't had a lot of turnover here in St. Ignatius, so most of you know what we're about, and a lot of our systems and our project-based learning and how we do things in mission. So most of you are very familiar with, I guess, you know, how we've conducted business and how we work to make for a great school. So we'll hit the high points and get through you know, some of the points I think to look at. Our percent right off the bat, beginning administration, you know, new hires, and unfortunately anymore, you know, hiring. I was just at a job fair yesterday in Bozeman, and it's you know, we want the best candidates, but I think we hire just about every, you know, candidate we can anymore. I mean, the number of candidates that we had, you know, when I started 30 years ago, there was 70 applicants for an elementary position. Now there's, you know, 5 or 6. So it, you know, we talk about the cost of education and the number of students coming out with teaching degrees, what it costs to get an education, and in relationship to, you know, what we pay for those students coming out. There's some challenges there. So finding teachers, it is difficult. So, applicants that we've had this year, we were very fortunate. The applicants that we're getting out of SKC, applicants, we continue to get, quite a few out of Western, but we hire the best candidates, but there's not as many of them as there used to be. So new hires, 31% of our new hires were Native American. Overall, 30, classified 35. So right around that, a third of our staff, and we're, like I said, we're real pleased with SKC, the work that they're doing with students to get those folks out. So finance end of the year report, just some narratives. Financially, our district's doing well. Safety, I think we're having a great year there. We've had over a month without COVID. Knock on wood. Academic achievement, this is probably the area that we're the most stressed out about at this point, and that's on the heels of COVID, losing that direct instruction, losing a year of 1 day a week. On the heels of that is the outcomes that we're not happy with. So academic achievement, is definitely a challenge. We close the achievement gap here in Mission. COVID has opened up the gap, and not just for Native American, but for all students in our district. So we've hit an all-time low in terms of academic achievement, and that goes back to not having what we feel is the best education for students, and that is the direct instruction from our teachers. So that's an area that we're going to continue to work on and probably be our biggest challenge over the next couple of years. Facilities, if you've had a chance to see the facilities, we've made some great improvements in our facilities. Out of the gym, we're going to expand that gym some more this summer, add on to our CTE center, get an air exchange done, with the ESSER money. Climate and culture. I think we have an outstanding climate and culture leadership. We've got great leaders. We've got great staff members, communication. We've always worked well with tribal ed. We'll continue to do that. We're part of any grants that have come our way, and always very supportive of each other when it comes to the best interests of St. Ignatius and School District 28. Our strategic plan, I've included that. That just gives you an idea of our annual goals at the district level. We have a 5-year plan, and from there we have our school plans. The additional funds that we've brought in. End of the year, our district goals last year, we hit 93% of our district goals. We had the state of Montana School Board of the Year last year, Principal of the Year, Mr. Hendrickson. So we're pleased with the achievements that St. Ignatius has had over the last few years, and we plan on continuing that. Extracurricular participation, give you an idea of how many of our Native American students are going out for the extracurriculars. Football is about 50-50, cross country, almost 80% of our Native Americans are out for cross country. Boys and girls basketball, 73%, cheerleading, 71%. Wrestling is probably, wrestling and track were the two lower sports. Softball's right there, consistent with our population, as well as volleyball. So some of them are above, some of them are right at, and 2 of them are just below. So our dropouts, if you look at the number of dropouts we've had, over the years, when I started my principalship in 2000, 2001, 12 dropouts in a year. 12, 6, 10. My first 4 years as a principal were horrible. So, reflecting back to where we were, we were losing a lot of students to, other schools. We've come a long ways. Graduation rate, 97% last year. That's huge. COVID has been a strain, for losing students. We'll continue to work on that, but kudos to Mr. Hendrickson, the high school, middle school, keeping students in school. Some of our systems, as you go down into the report, student-led conferences, Student First, all of our MBI systems have been transitioned into positive system interventions. There is no MBI anymore. It's all MTSS. St. Ignatius has created our own assessment of our systems. We're pretty proud of it. Link Crew, like I said, our change from MBI has just been transitioned over to PSI. And Indian Ed for All, what we do for academic, behavioral, attendance, supportive systems that are out there. I would put our school up against any school in the state of Montana when it comes to positive systems. We stand by that. I think we're one of the more positive centered schools in the state of Montana. So we've added a lot. STEAM, we now have a STEAM lab for all of our elementary students, one of our favorite classes. We've got a STEAM lab in the high school, middle school. We're really trying to grow our CTE programs, curriculums, senior projects. I know, a lot of these you're already familiar with. Our milepost plans, our PLCs, our instructional fundamental 5, after school tutoring. We've partnered with Boys and Girls Club. They're here every night until 7 o'clock in the evening. They serve dinner. They'll be here all summer. We've invested a lot of time and money with ESSER into the Boys and Girls Club, making those opportunities hopefully grow and be able to sustain down the road. Personal finance, some of those programs that we've had for 20 years, continue to be a positive part of what we do here. Indian Ed for All. I think we were one of the very few schools in the state that have Indian Ed for All tied to our evaluation system. We have handbooks for our teachers, expectations in 3 different areas for Indian Ed for All, and it's tied directly to their evaluation. So along those, not only do we expect it, but we do, assess it as well. So all in all, like I said, I think most of you are very familiar. I've been given these presentations for 21 years and it I still think we're there's places that we can grow and do a better job, but I know most of you are very familiar with what we do, what we're about, and hopefully academically all the things that we've added, the data, if there's questions, for sure, let us know. We've included kind of how we evaluate ourselves on an annual basis with our PSI. We've added some survey information for you, our handbooks, our data that we've collected, our goals, where we feel we're at with our systems. I could go on. I mean, you give me, you want me to talk about St. Ignatius, I could probably talk, I know I could take the 5 minutes in just introduction, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hendrickson for a minute because I'll ramble on. I'll keep you guys here for the rest of the evening if you don't cut me off.
All right. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, I'm good enough.
Michelle, if you could go to. Yeah, the data sheet. The MMS MHS annual data sheet, it looks like this. It's it's towards the back of the presentation. Before Appendix A, Part 1. Let's see. I think, where are you at here? Yeah, keep going up there. That's our evaluation of ourself of the middle school and high school there. On our systems piece, how we run as a school and function. There we go. One more. Okay, perfect. So this is a data collection sheet that we do. I try to put it as user-friendly as possible so you can look at it and go, okay, there we go. This is what it's about. I understand it. It's not too crazy. So you can see our graduation rate has increased, I think, since 2013 or 14 from 77% to almost 97%. That's something that we are very proud of as a school. That 96% last year is the highest graduation rate that Mission's ever seen. That's one kid, right? So one kid didn't graduate on time in 4 years. Okay. Dropout rate, that's just number of students who drop out through the entire high school over 1 year. And then you can see our percentage of seniors that go to college. So we track that every year. Our attendance rates, those have, so you can see
Sean,
those.
can I interrupt you for a second?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
So because I obviously know your numbers and how well you guys have been doing, what can you say about the 5 students that school-wide dropped out last year? And were any of those, is any of that our tribal students?
Yes, there are. I think 3 out of the 5. I think 3 out of the 5 were tribal students. That's a combination of things. Students got behind, right, and then even got further behind when COVID happened. We're not, committed to finishing high school. We have a team in the middle school and high school that we track our most at-risk kids, and we meet with them. They get assigned a mentor, an adult mentor, who basically looks out for them for the school year. I attribute that process and how we work through that for the 97%, right? But yes, it's a battle every day. We've reached that kind of the pinnacle, and now it's we meet, every Monday and Tuesday. We have a team of like 7 staff members and myself who basically give up their lunch to meet with students and parents and try and create plans to help these kids stay on track, get back on track. And that's the piece, that's the part of Mission that I think separates us from other schools.
Is there a process to drop back in for any of those kids? Is there a possibility? And if so, is there a process?
The process is me or the counselor or somebody else reaching out to them personally. And we, when kids try to or drop out or quit going to school, sometimes we don't even see them. So we don't get the opportunity to talk to them. They have poor attendance, and then all of a sudden one day they're just gone, and they don't, somebody comes in and says, we're checking them out. And yeah, we have
several options for students to graduate, right? We have our traditional route, which is 23 credits. We have an alternative diploma, which is the state minimum, which is 20 credits. So if we get kids that get themselves into trouble, there's still a way to help them get around that. We kind of cut out some of the extras, extra kind of classes that we offer, maybe electives, and really get to the core stuff that they need to have before they leave here. We have a high set option, right, within the school, that students, after they reach 12 credits, they have to be 12 credits and be able to read at an 8th grade level, a documented level. Then they can apply for that. And we work with basically the college, right, to help them get to that point. They can be in school and work through our Mission Forward Academy, which is basically the equivalent of an alternative school within a school within our school. So we can help them. They can get outside help, planning and trying to get there. And then we also have options through Job Corps and the Montana Youth Challenge as well, that we have MOUs that if kids go through there and graduate and meet certain standards, they can also get a diploma and graduate from Mission High School, which I think is an excellent option as well. So yeah, you can see if you kind of scroll down a little bit, those numbers that you might be interested in, the SBAC, that's what we're basically graded on by the state, right? And those are, for us, of grades 3 through 8. That's the whole state of Montana. The Smarter Balanced, what everyone knows is Common Core, right? The Common Core state standards. And so those are our percentages. You can see the classes, the colors are how they through the years. We've had some significant decreases in the last 2 years. And then during COVID, they didn't even happen. So we didn't have any kind of testing or assessment of students for 2 years. And then kids being out of school for 3 months to 15 months, depending on what they chose last year to be remote or in school or in person. There's a lot of deficiencies in areas, like Jason said, that we're continuing to try and remediate, get kids back to where they need. So we've really focused on a lot of those areas. And then other areas that we've really taken a look at, not just for students, but also staff, is self-care, like taking care of yourself and being healthy and at your best, because I know this has been a strain on everybody, right? Not just students and their families, but also teachers. And then really addressing a lot of the mental health stuff. We've got a grant through Montana State University where we have trainers and people that work with our freshmen and sophomore when they come through, youth aware of mental health, and that gives them scenarios that they're going to see in real life. Hopefully, give them tools and tips to help with that. And then our advisory, we have a weekly advisory, and it basically deals with kids go through modules or units of learning about mental health and how it affects them and how they can reach out. And they have a coach, or they have coaches, which are one staff member that serves as their advisor, and then another staff member that they have chosen, and then they can communicate through that program, those programs online, whether they're in school or out of school. So they can message, coach, give compliments, help students out, help them work through a problem, because sometimes kids have an easier time writing than actually verbalizing some of those things. So just another option that we've tried to explore and really put into place since COVID happened.
You guys have questions for us? I know we just threw a whole lot your way, but like I said, most of you that have kind of listened to or been on council, have heard us before, so we don't want to be too redundant or repetitive, but are there questions that you guys have for us?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just a question, a couple questions. One is, you probably heard my question to Polson School concerning the superintendents from the Class AA schools, I believe it was, expressing their dissatisfaction and no confidence in Superintendent Elsie Arnson's leadership or lack thereof from their letter. I was curious as to Mission's St. Ignatius School District's interactions with OPI and some of the challenges, and if you're willing, whatever your thoughts are concerning, superintendent and her leadership. And then I have a couple questions after that.
We were actually on when Mr. Cutler from Polson was speaking, and I think you would be hard pressed to find any superintendent right now that is supportive of the leadership of RC Superintendent Elsie. So Arnston, we would echo probably what you've heard all day. I'd be surprised if you've heard anything positive about our superintendent of schools. OPI, I think those folks at OPI work hard. I think they've been put under a great deal of stress, navigating these past few years, the leadership and taking on more roles. I think it's going to affect the funding. I've never submitted, a grant or anything to OPI that hasn't had some sort of feedback for correction. I just finished the Title I audit 2 weeks ago, and I've heard nothing. What concerns me is the accountability, and I like to be accountable, and not hearing a word about, it's a pretty in-depth audit, and I know I'm not perfect, so I know there's some things wrong within that audit that should have been caught, or they should have called me on and said, hey, you need to look at this or tweak that, and that's just part of any grant or any audit that you're a part of, and I've heard nothing, so I guess what concerns me is where this is going. I think it's going to eventually affect school funding for Montana, relationships with the federal government, and our inability to, you close down licensure. People are able to get their license renewed for 6 months, and you just close the office down. That's not how we're going to be the best at what we do. So in terms of education and state leadership, yeah, we're as frustrated as anybody when it comes to dealing with, what we're dealing with right now with OPI and the leadership thereof. So I don't know if Mr. Hendrickson wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I think we're all there. I'll just share a story. We have a teacher. She has had struggled to get licensure in another area. She and I contacted OPI both verbally and in writing or via email in August, the end of August. It's almost, it's middle of December and we have yet to hear back. They're putting out there that the backlog, the backlog of communication is 1 month, and we're at 4 right now. So yeah, it's a pretty sad state of affairs, and not a lot of happy people and educators in Montana when it comes to that. So hopefully there's a solution or an answer to this, or a light at the end of the tunnel, but it does not look like it right now. As Jason said, they shut state licensure down for the next 6 months as of yesterday, which I've never heard of. I don't know. Doesn't really make sense. I don't get how you can do it, but it happened and here we are.
Can I ask a follow-up question in that regard? Gentlemen, can you explain what are some of the things that would, what are, you know, if you have teachers that cannot get relicensed, what are some of the things, you know, one of the top things in my head is accreditation. What are some of the possible things that you all could see impacting your folks there that may not be able to get their license, their renewal for their licensing also? And then I guess, you know, like our language teachers, you know, the class 7 certification, you know, that goes through the same office, right? Goes through the same place. So I'm just curious, what would you see, or what could you envision potentially happening? You mentioned that one person that's having issues with her licensure, but you know, I'm concerned that as you all are facing this from OPI and you just heard about it, you know, how is that affecting, you know, we're concerned about our native students particularly, but you know, I'm trying to think of ways that, you know, we as a tribe can, I don't know what exactly other than, you know, pound on the door of the superintendent's office in Helena as well, I guess.
Yeah, as much noise that can be made. I kind of wish the entire state of Montana had the opportunity to sign the letter. And I know, you know, the Class B schools are looking at, you know, what we can do, you know, to make some noise about our, you know, frustrations. But I think you're already faced with an issue of a teacher shortage in Montana, and we've just compound, you know, we've made the problem worse by now making it harder, you know, to get licensed, to be accredited. You know, those are all things that were already, you know, an issue, and now we've made a problem that we were all working, you know, collectively towards, even tougher to overcome. So I think, you know, two parts to answer your question. I think, yes, the more noise that can be made. Two, you know, finding quality teachers for all of our kids what has been an issue, like we mentioned earlier. It's going to get harder when you can't, when teachers are faced with not being able to get, you know, licensed, for schools not being able to be accredited, and take it a step further, and you start dabbling in, you know, lack of federal funding, or you know, you take our federal funds away from St. Ignatius and we're broke. It would be devastating for our district. So you know, we rely on the funding. The entire system was already in need of support, and when it boils down to what's best for kids, you know, quality teachers is definitely right up there, and just finding teachers tougher and tougher. Like I said, I was at the job fair yesterday. You know, there's 50 teachers coming out of Bozeman this semester, and there were probably 30 to 35 superintendents, all, you know, and that's a small percentage of folks that still need people for this year, you know, all, you know, juggling for, you know, one certified math position. You know, it's like, it's tough, you know. And so, yeah, it's gonna get tougher and tougher, and this is only perpetuating the problem, I believe.
If I may, another question I have is, you know, what is you all's at the school there practices or plans for, like, if you have an emergency? You know, unfortunately we hear across the country, you know, the school shootings and such. I'm thinking I had worked over at Sales Scrutiny College a few different times, and oftentimes they would have us, have bring in a scenario, and we'd all have to gather at certain points and, have an emergency plan, and each building had their own building emergency chief, so to speak. And what are your plans? What do you all do in that regard annually? And then another question that I have is, I had managed for a short time over at the college, the student housing. And one of the issues that we had there was trying to figure out how to accommodate smudging. And, I have a community member there that has visited with me about a issue there, of your personnel issue there, but I don't want to get into that. I'd rather just visit with you face to face on that. But in general, I would like to ask, what is you all's policy in regards to smudging, or your thoughts about that? I know at SKC, when I was working with the housing program, we kind of had to go back and forth over that issue at the college in terms of housing, and how to accommodate that, how do we respond to that? But a couple questions that I had, and appreciate your answer. Thank you.
The crisis prevention plan, that's another 100 and some pages in terms of drills, things that we have in place. Our campus is pretty much, just today we were dealing with the TikTok video of, the threat on schools tomorrow. So, we heightened, for these days. At the same time, we can't cower and not show up. We can't let those folks, instill the fear that is really, I guess we have to let folks know. That's what we're doing tonight. We'll have 2 all calls. The technology is nice in terms of letting people know, but at the same time, we've heightened the fear of safety in schools. And that's the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. So crisis prevention plan, we've got a very in-depth, we're able to lock our school down within seconds. We've got cable systems set up where, even if a lock doesn't work, we can latch each door in terms of access, alarms, doors that automatically shut. We can lock our facility down within seconds. So in terms of crisis prevention, we've done a lot of work in terms of safety. I think our facility is extremely safe. Tomorrow, we're going to be, somewhat heightened in our safety plan. We'll have a soft lockdown in terms of, access. We'll be, checking bags on the way into school. We've got to assure safety, and that's what we're going to do tomorrow. But we'll be here, it's in terms of drills, we drill lockdown drills, we drill evacuation, fire, stop, drop, roll. I mean, we have drills and situations that we go through. We did our lockdown drill last week during passing time and learned a whole lot, about different potential issues that we have with the PA system, and being able to communicate if our passing time music is playing, for example, or there was a door in the new wing that didn't have the cable system to be able to lock if we weren't able to lock from the outside. So, we're constantly working on drills in terms of safety. The smudging, I think that that would probably be a longer conversation that we could have. For us, it really, sometimes if it's perceived as religion, I know there's a time and a place. I know in the high school, At times, they've had opportunities and they do smudge. We try to be careful so it doesn't, blow down the hall into areas that, people may not understand what it is, where it's coming from, what's going on, so communication, I think, in terms of smudging, to answer your question, there isn't a dead fast rule, but I think it boils down to what it's being used for and when is it appropriate, and if and when we do that sort of thing, to make sure we do it in a way that everybody is, informed as to what's going on, because you may have a new teacher, and that's where sometimes the issues arise, where you've got a new teacher and they're like, well, what is that? What is it? Something's burning in the hallway, or so I think it's there's really no dead fast rule when it comes to smudging. I think it is something that we don't necessarily discourage, but we also want to do it in a way that is handled for educational reasons and with educational support in terms of communication.
Thank you, Jason. Mike needs to leave, and so we need to wrap up and accept all the school reports that we listened to today. We had Hot Springs, Charlotte, Polson, and Mission. But before we do that, I just wanted to congratulate Mission on being the State School Board of the Year, receiving the State Principal of the Year, Sean, and you, Jason, for the WMAS Superintendent of the Year. So you guys are doing something right. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to accept the school annual reports.
Make a motion, Madam.
Okay. Motion by James, second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Keep
Thanks
up
for
the good
having
work.
us.
Yep,
Thank
keep
you.
up the good
Guys.
work. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mike.
Good luck in the elections.
Okay, thank you. You guys have a good weekend. Stay safe.
Yep, bye.
Everyone remember to vote if you haven't absenteed already.